Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. You're listening to the Islamic Vibes podcast. I'm your host, Majid. And today I have three special co-hosts. I'll say, I'm not going to say guests because these guys are part of the team. I have Brother Rash, Brother Afi, and Brother Kam. How are you doing, my brothers?
Alhamdulillah, how's things? All good?
All good, man, all good. I can see Afi's representing his local football team today with his Man United top. Could there be any reason why you go wearing a United top today, by any chance?
No. You caught me off guard because when he said that we got to talk about significant events today, I thought you were referring to the return of the prodigal son.
Okay, yes. Well, for people who probably don't know what we're talking about, obviously it's the second debut of Cristiano Ronaldo for Manchester United today, and I guess people are excited, but a lot of people are going to be thinking about that. But it's good though at the same time. We're trying to get people to start thinking about a bit more serious things. I think the date matches up.
Half of my social media is filled with the Ronaldo posters and the other half is talking about 9/11. So I think that's probably a good place to start.
Well, you got 50-50 at least. I mean, but yeah, okay. Let's make a start, inshallah, brothers. And as you know, the listeners will gather that today we're going to be speaking about September 11th. And yeah, if you're speaking about September 11th, 2021, then I guess it is about the return of Ronaldo. But we're talking about September 11, 2001. Okay, which was an event which, for many people, they say the world changed, and it's been 20 years since then. And in all honesty, I think the reason why a lot of people are speaking about it and you're seeing on the media is because it's the 20th year anniversary, and then we see what happened with the West supposedly leaving Afghanistan. Otherwise, you probably notice there's not really a big hoo-ha about September 11th. There hasn't been anyway for many years now. People don't even have a minute silence anymore. But we're going to be speaking about it because as Muslims, it's really important. So guys, just as an icebreaker, okay, I'm just going to drop a question to each one of you. I'll start off with Rash. Rash, what were you doing when the planes flew into the Twin Towers? Do you remember?
I was at work, but it was surreal. I think I read an article today, which was saying, or was it yesterday, which was saying that everybody pretty much remembers where they were when this happened. It was that significant. So I still quite vividly remember I was in the office and everybody gathered around one person's laptop or PC, and that was something you typically wouldn't do in an IT type company. You're all chatting on Messenger or emails or whatever. You don't tend to, other than maybe one-to-one, go and sit and chat with someone. So what ended up happening is literally this occurred. Someone obviously heard about it before anybody else. It wasn't like nowadays where, when a significant event happens, everybody's got Twitter notifications turned on, or everybody's got, all various news apps on their phone with notifications. Back then, it was more about someone going out of their way to go on the BBC News site or something like that. So one particular guy had kind of seen the news, put the video on, and literally everybody crowded around his machine and everybody was in shock. So yeah, I quite vividly remember it, and I'm sure others do as well.
Yeah, Afi?
Yeah, bro, I remember very, very clearly. I was actually at Star City in Birmingham.
Okay.
And like you say, Rash, you don't get the news alerts coming up on your phone. And one of my friends rang me up because I know you're in Star City, so you won't have seen this, but a plane's just gone into the World Trade Center. And, I think we were going back 20 years now. You're young at uni, you don't really think about the bigger picture. And, you think, whoa, the impact on America as this mighty nation that goes around bullying countries. You see, like, not positive sign, but, a lot of Muslims were getting excited about this, I think is the right thing to say. But very, very quickly, as that initial news sets in, you do begin to think, oh no, what's going to happen from here?
Okay. Well, I didn't even know Star City was 20 years old, but thanks for that update. Cam?
Yeah, I was 12 years old when this happened, and I can vividly, and even then, look, it's 12 years old, and I can vividly remember the day. That's how impactful that moment was. So I remember we just got back from school, and it was already on the news. So the first plane had already hit, and mum, dad, everybody's around the sort of TV looking at, saying what's going on. And then me and my twin brother JK, obviously some listeners probably know JK from his Sira sessions and stuff that he does with Botu. But yeah, we both stood in front of the TV, and we, while the anchor was talking about the first one, the second one went in. And it literally felt like a movie. And we're young then, we're young, our mind's still developing. We're going to school. So I think mentally it impacted us more than it would have impacted anyone older, because you're going into sort of office environments. Everyone knows what the norm is, how you should react, and you can't just stop blaming every Muslim for it and things like that. Whereas as kids, going into school the next day or the years going by is a complete different shift. You could feel that sort of parents, must have told their kids, stay away from Muslim kids and things like that. And you hear the odd comment of, "Oh, you're a terrorist," that sort of thing. So
Okay.
yeah, so when I was going, yeah, for me I think it was sort of it was mentally sort of firstly it made me obviously look into Islam more, because I thought, oh, what's going on? Everyone's talking about Islam, and you're a kid then. But secondly, it definitely impacted me throughout the years, and it's a
MashaAllah.
major pivotal moment in the history of Islam, I'd say, because since the fall of the state, I can't think of anything more impactful that has changed, the minds of Muslims since that point.
MashaAllah, MashaAllah. I asked you about where you were, and you've told me your life story and historic story as well. So you got it all in there, bro. We can just like put this podcast to bed now. But well, to me, I mean, I'll tell you where I was in. I was in uni. I was in Derby Uni, and I was enrolling. I was with some boys, and we seen it. And I was on the Deen then. I'll be straight with you, but I had been on the Deen before, so I knew what America had been doing in our lands and stuff. And in all honesty, I'm not shy to say this, because my initial reaction was one of like, Allahu Akbar. I'll be straight with you. However, you're young, you're naive, and you don't really understand the bigger picture, like Afi said. And not just that. I mean, innocent people being killed and stuff like this is not part of Islam anyway. But I'm just being honest with you that at that moment, it was like, finally, they started to feel a bit of the medicine themselves. But anyway, listen, let's carry on, inshallah, and get into some more juicy bits. So I think something that's really, really important to start off is that the questions of what happened after 9/11, because we know that the war on terror was announced. We know that Afghanistan was invaded, then Iraq was invaded, and a lot of this was, even though there was no actual link between Iraq and 9/11, it was just like America now had its license to do what it pleased, and nobody could say anything because they would say, "Remember 9/11," right? So even up until today, you do still get some Muslims who maybe still think that this was for money, this was for resources, and they can't really make that link of, Islam is like a religion, like any other religion. How can it be a war against Islam? As we know, war on terror equals war on Islam. So I'm thinking, let's spend a bit of time and sort of like discussing why it's clear, it's blatant for anyone who does even a little bit of reading to see that this was a war in Islam, and 20 years later this is the same thing that's going on. So let's discuss this first. Anyone can maybe start with their input. I think most of you guys are mute. Okay, go on, Cam.
Yeah, I can kick off. I think it's really important to first understand what an ideology is, because then you can really understand the full picture. Because without knowing, that there's certain ideology, when we say ideology, we mean a sort of a construct that has the ideals, the concepts, the beliefs, all of a specific, whether it's a nation or people. It's all like they call it a study of ideas, don't they? Ologies are usually a study, but when you look at it in terms of, like, you'd hear a lot as capitalism is an ideology, Islam is an ideology, communism is an ideology, and people go as far as calling things like Islamism is an ideology, and they start blurring the lines a bit. But let's stick to the main ones, which is basically capitalism, communism, and Islam. When you understand essentially what an ideology is, it's that they will always compete, because the way they are, they want to dominate over other ideologies.
Cam, just a sec. So you're saying Islam is an ideology? You got to put a bit of context. Are you saying Islam is an ideology?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So now you're explaining what an ideology is. Yeah. That's cool. That's cool.
Yeah. So essentially, with ideologies, you have to realize that they will. Shit, I've lost my thought now. I've lost my
Sorry,
train of
man.
thought.
Sorry. I think they're going to compete. You're saying the ideologies, they're always going to compete.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah. So naturally, if you look at history as well, ideologies have always competed with each other, whether it's from the time of the Prophet ﷺ, during the time with the Persian Empire, which was Zoroastrianism, and the Roman Empire. Obviously, we know with what is Caesar render unto Caesar, what is God render unto gods. And they both had their forms of ideologies that they were spreading at the time and dominating over each other. And that's when Islam was obviously born. And Islam was an ideology because it wants to spread obviously Allah's laws and Allah's Sharia over the rest of the world. It wants to propagate. So every ideology wants to propagate their beliefs in some form or another. And naturally, that means that you will clash with the other competing ideologies. So when you know that, you should understand that capitalism itself, and there's no lie that capitalism, America sort of says that they are a capitalist state and they espouse capitalism. That's just a normal thing. You would know if you did some reading. That's what they say. Their ideology is capitalism, and the ideology of capitalism is essentially about that man is essentially free to do as he please, as long as he doesn't sort of go onto the boundaries of someone else's freedoms. And benefit is natural to man. So naturally, man wants to benefit, and that's why their criteria in everything in life is whether it's beneficial for us or not beneficial for us.
Mm-hmm. Expediency.
Expediency. And for Muslims, it's whether it's halal or haram. So you can see there's a complete shift and difference there, and that's why that's why you'd say they're two different ideologies.
Yeah. Some good points there.
What I'd like to add a little bit. So you're asking, your initial question was about, did America go into the Muslim lands for like natural resources, the oil, especially.
What we're saying is that they didn't. But
I know.
Yeah.
You asked the question is, some people still believe that, don't they? Some people still say to this day that the main reason America is in the Muslim lands is because of the natural, it's resourceful, there's oil there, there's actually many other minerals, and having control of that is in their interests, because like say, even as Cam just mentioned, from a capitalist ideology point of view, you want to further increase your capital. The more capital you have, the stronger you are. So I do appreciate that some people still stick to that line. But I think in regards to your question, I think this is where most people haven't drilled down a little bit more. And to be fair, I can blame myself and any Muslim that hasn't done this. We easily influenced by the media sometimes, and we just read and watch what's in the mainstream media. A question I would ask to most Muslims is, how many of you have read some of the think tank reports that America writes? There's many of them. We've all heard of Rand Report. We've all heard of things like the Institute of Peace, and we've heard of the likes of what's the one that Cam always mentions? Brookings Institute. There's so many of them, and early on, 20 years ago, and just immediately after 9/11, there was those think tanks did like reports on Islam. And when they talked about Islam, they tried to differentiate between a very ritualistic version of Islam and a politicized version of Islam. And when they did that, they highlighted very clearly that their enemy, or what they're trying to suppress, is that version of Islam which is holistic. is that version of Islam that isn't just reserved for the home and the mosque, is one where people want to live their whole lives by Islam. So when Cam is talking about an ideology, we can simplify it. We can just say an ideology is where every single aspect of your life is governed by this one idea. And in the West and in capitalism, that also is the case. Their ideology is actually secularism. So their secularism is the fact that, you know, they are allowed to be religious, but it has to be limited to their personal sphere. But in the public sphere, you know, it has to be a government, and that government is not influenced by religion. So you can immediately see that secularism is one type of ideology. It doesn't allow a religion into state affairs. But Islam is actually an ideology, and 1400 years of history testify this, that Islam had a place in governance and in politics. So any person just from that simplistic point of view can look at it and go, these two, regardless if you call them ideologies, these two things, they will clash, because one is saying you cannot allow religion in state affairs, and the other one is saying religion must exist in state affairs. It just so happened that after the collapse of the Uthmani Khilafah in 1924, Muslims were at that level where, you know, the reason they were able to destroy the Islamic State, the real Islamic State, is because Muslims had declined in their understanding of you know, Islam has to exist at this state level. But now, as the 50s and the 60s and so on was going past, Muslims were coming back to that realization that, you know what, we're still facing problems. In fact, the problems are getting worse, and the solution must come from bringing Islam back. So just to wrap up my point is that we all looked at it, a lot of people looked at it and went, oh, America going into the Middle East for oil. But we never stepped back and went, actually, if they go in for something else, they'll get the oil and the natural resources anyway. That's a positive byproduct of their strategies in the Muslim lands. Their primary objective was to change Muslims, was to get them to be secular Muslims, and in order to remove this ideology. And anything that you read in those more papers that are written more for the thinkers rather than for the common masses, you know, the Rand report and things like that, that common people don't read things like that. But if they read them, they will all almost immediately realize, wait there, yeah, there is more to it than oil.
Yeah, I think there's two elements. You know, you're saying reading the these Rand reports, and you know, I think also the fact, if people understood what Islam is, they actually probably wouldn't even need to read anything. If they understand, like you guys have said already, that Islam as systems of life, it deals with not just how you live your life by, you know, as an individual, but how you live in society. And we also saw that the messenger Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he took Islam to other people, and after him the Sahaba, they took Islam to the other people, like you mentioned, the Romans, the Persians. So we can clearly see that Islam expanded because it had a way of life which was divine, and it was divinely instructed that you have to spread it. And then I think the point Kam was saying as well, and Rashi touched upon that, the same way the West have an ideology and they feel it's the best, and they want to spread it to the rest of mankind. And it's ultimately going to come to a stage where there's going to be a clash, as there was between America, i.e. capitalism, and communism. Capitalism won. And obviously communism failed, and, you know, it became irrelevant. I want to get your thoughts on this question, if you have any, and then I want to drop another question, and I'll direct that to you at the beginning. So I don't know if you want to add anything to this one.
Yeah, I just want to build on what Rash was saying, actually, because while you were talking, that's where my head was at. I think what Muslims need to realize, and I think, yeah, you're right, the evidence is out there if you go looking for it. And that's probably where we're a bit more different, because we're informed, we go and look for this information. But there's plenty out there in the public domain that we're seeing day to day, that all you need to do is clear the deception, that's the cloudiness that they're shrouding the evidence with, and put the pieces there in front of you. So let's just look at some basics here, right? So it's not the rules of Islam that they've got a problem with, or the actions, sorry. It's where it emanates from, because one Muslim could be carrying out an action. For example, hijab one is a classic one. They attack the woman wearing hijab, but they won't attack the nuns who are dressed pretty similar. You know, it could be argued to dress in a similar way. And why is one a problem and one isn't? It's because one emanates from a criteria that cannot be changed. It's fixed because it's the word of the creator. So either you've got to acknowledge that now actually we're removing that criteria, i.e. the word of the creator, and we're going to adopt something else, or benefit or human rights or whatever, and then they'll be all right with it. Or you got to say, no, we're going to stay stubborn and this is what we believe in. So that's what Muslims need to, and you can see Muslims are starting to see this, because you see these comparisons that they're drawing in examples like hijab. So when you look at what the West is doing with the Muslims, and this is where I think post 9/11 people really did start to see this, was there seems to be a problem with the actions of what Muslims are doing, and no one draws attention to actions that other religions are doing. And why is this? And it's the why bit that I think Muslims hadn't fully grasped until post 9/11.
And can I just quickly
go on.
before you go on to your next question? I think a lot of Muslims will think, well, when we talk about ideologies or capitalism that has a country or state that represents it, like America, communism had obviously the Soviet Union. What does Muslims have? You know, when it comes to Muslims are just a sort of deaggregated population all over the world. Why is that an ideology? How is it a threat to the West? And that's something it's probably one of a kind for Muslims, is that because Islam is the truth, it naturally they weren't able to destroy it when they destroyed the state in 1924, because the Muslims continued to believe in obviously in Islam, and they didn't sort of switch their beliefs the same way the communists sort of switched over to capitalism and were happy under capitalism. The populations didn't switch over to capitalism after this fall of the state, and they saw this as a problem, and it was brewing up all the way till probably 9/11, till they thought, you know what, we need to do something. There's no way we're going to let this revival continue like it is. It's a boiling kettle. It's a kettle boiling, and we need to go in and really put their foot down, reorganize things, bring democracy in, bring their freedoms in, show people like you can live like an American lifestyle, and it's way better than what you want in your social system. And that failed for them, really. And Muslims continued, I think, after 9/11. What they thought is they're dousing the flames. What they did instead is they gave it a catalyst to actually put it with the boiling point even closer than it was. So they were trying to put cold water on top of it, but it wasn't. The kettle's boiling at a higher rate now, and I think that's one failure. And I think Muslims need to realize that you don't need a state to fight ideologies. An ideology can exist without a state as well.
And I just add, just to add one more point to Cam's point, is you don't need to be talking about, just on that point of the ideology, but you don't need to be talking about Islam being applied as a state, and only those people who call for Islam being a state, where that's a problem, and that's what the West are fighting. Because every Muslim's got this love for Islam that they actually want other people, not Muslims, to embrace and be a part of. And that's why you get a lot of people saying, look, the dawah is showing people a good example about Islam, presenting Islam in a good way. And even this shows the nature of what Islam is. It came for the whole of mankind. And every Muslim understands this, albeit they call for it in different ways. And that is where there's a problem. And that's why the Ummah as a whole was a concern for the West.
Can I just give a bit of credibility to this in terms of, we mentioned these reports. Can I just read quickly to you the RAND report in 2004, and there was a report called Civil Democratic Islam. So let me just read you a little bit of this. So anybody who's listening is wondering that, are these guys just talking from, making stuff up? So this report, it starts off by going, devising a judicious approach requires finely grained understanding of the ongoing ideological struggle within Islam. So they think it's a struggle within Islam, okay, to identify the appropriate partners and set realistic goals and means to encourage its evolution in a positive way. In other words, they're telling us there that they want to change Islam because they see an issue within Islam. Remember, they never wanted to make this explicitly a war on Islam. They called it a war on terror. But here in the Rand report, they're telling you there's a problem in Islam itself and we need to change it. Then the next paragraph actually highlights even more. It says the United States has 3 goals in regard to politicized Islam. First, it wants to prevent the spread of extremism and violence. Second, in doing so, it needs to avoid the impression that the United States is opposed to Islam. So again, and it's put in that in double quotes. And then third, in the longer run, it must find ways to help address the deeper economic, social, and political causes feeding Islamic radicalization and to encourage a move towards development and, most importantly, democratization. So they're highlighting that the only way they can change Islam is by bringing some form of democracy into the Muslim lands and changing Islam. So they themselves say they do this. They don't need, someone doesn't need us to explicitly or try to imply it in some way.
Yeah, exactly. And I did want to add a quote myself, to be honest with you, from Tony Blair from 2005, when he was basically describing what a terrorist and extremist looks like. And he said that they demand the elimination of Israel, the withdrawal of all Westerners from Muslim countries, irrespective of the wishes of the people and government, the establishment of effectively Taliban states and Sharia law in the world, in the Arab world, en route to one caliphate of all Muslim nations. And this is how Tony Blair in 2005 described what the terrorists are. And actually, only recently, a few days ago, he was talking about this issue again, about, since Taliban came back into power. And what he said was that the Taliban is part of the global movement of radical Islam. The movement contains many different groups, but they share the same basic ideology. In simple terms, this holds that there is only one true faith. Okay, I'm sure every Muslim believes that. Only one true view of that faith, and that society, politics, and culture should be governed by that view. Radical Islam believes not only in Islamism, the turning of the religion into a political doctrine, but in the justification of struggle, if necessary, armed struggle to achieve it. Other Islamist groups agree with the ends, but disagree on whether there should be violence or not. So the only reason why I want to mention that is because you guys have talked about ideologies, how they look after the affairs of the people, which is a political matter. And here it's been described clearly from the horse's mouth on what the target is. And every Muslim will say that they want the removal of Israel, that they want Sharia, that they want a Khilafah. Every single Muslim, whether he's practicing, whether he's not practicing, that's what he will say, because it's what Islam tells you. Moving on to our next question, guys. Any one of you guys can answer this. So we can see that America and the West, like Kama said, they saw that things were bubbling in the Muslim world. Muslims actually, rather than going away from their deen since 1924, they're getting closer to their deen. So something had to be done. Okay, so they've invaded the lands. But if we're saying Islam is the target, Islam as a belief is the target, you can't kill an idea with a gun. So how did America and its allies attempt to deal with Islam as an idea? What do you guys think? Let's discuss this fact.
I don't think they did. I think they failed in that.
No. Whether they failed or not, but how
they
what
tried.
can we see? Because remember, people, if they're thinking it's just about resources, then invading a country is enough, right?
Yeah.
But and if we're saying that no, it's attack against Islam as an idea, then invasion isn't going to solve that, right? So what steps did they take in order to, and how did they want to change the idea of Islam? That's what I'm asking you.
Yeah, there were many steps, wasn't there? Just I'll give one of them, and brothers can add. Early on, they tried to, as I mentioned in that quote from the Rand report, early on they highlighted that there are Muslims of different kind of delineations, of different kind of thought processes. They categorize people into like fundamentalists, modernists and stuff like. They categorize that there's a spectrum of Muslims. Let's try and find the ones we can work with, and then work from within. Okay, so what their one strategy was, obviously the invasion. Let's invade their lands. Let's go in there. They originally thought, especially in Iraq, when they go in, the people would welcome them with open arms, because they were so arrogant with their way of life and their democracy. They thought that Muslims would embrace it openly. And they failed in that respect. They got in there and they realized, actually, no, this is not what the Muslims want. We can't aggressively or from the top down just enforce democracy on these people. So that's when they moved towards kind of more covert strategies of trying to find Muslims who would be more kind of easily or more malleable, and to change Islam from within. So that was some of their approaches, and we see those approaches in Afghanistan, and particularly in Iraq.
What changes do you think they were after?
In terms of from the people?
No, in Islam. Because it's not like they were saying become non-Muslims, were they?
No, they were, and they, even though that's what they want, and that's what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, that's what they want. They want us to leave our religion. They want us to follow their religion, and they will never be happy with us, as Allah tells us, until we completely follow their religion. So no doubt that's what they want, but they recognize they weren't going to get Muslims to completely apostatize. Like Cam said, in the way the communists, they apostatized from communism and became capitalists. The Muslims, when they lost their state, they didn't apostatize from Islam. They remained Muslims. So America and their allies, what they recognized they needed to do is secularize Muslims. So, and again, to be fair, if someone adopts secularism in their belief, in their Aqidah, that is still taking you outside Islam. That is apostatizing you. If you fundamentally believe that Islam can be secular. However,
so they wanted you to leave Islam without knowing you've left Islam.
Exactly, 100%. They wanted you to think that, oh, okay, I can still be Muslim whilst completely adopting, for example, democracy and believing in it. Whereas they even realized after a while that wasn't going to work. So then they thought, how can we still implement democracy using more of an iron fist approach, which is what we see with some of these puppet rulers in most of the Muslim countries.
And we can see from one thing, Afi, and we could just see that also from the language of hearts and minds, wasn't it? Remember the hearts and mind thing was big, wasn't it? Like
that's a very important one.
Win hearts and minds. And Afi, what did that mean? Winning hearts and minds.
That's what I was going to talk about. So that was the point, and I think you said that occupation was never going to do it. No. Actually, they thought occupation would do it, because they had demonized Saddam so much that they thought that, right, when we go in and remove Saddam, everyone's going to welcome us with open arms, and they'll see us as a savior, and they'll aspire to our way of life. And this just goes to show that they don't understand what Islam is, because Islam isn't about the material benefit or the gain that it's going to have that it is in the West, because in West it's all about the individual, and it is that greed drives everyone and the aspiration to have this millionaire lifestyle. But Islam is different, we've seen it in, on our numerous trips to the Middle East, where in Egypt, where people are poor, but they're content with their poverty.
Definitely.
The aspiration isn't there to become millionaires, man. They'll be happy with as long as my Lord is pleased with me and I have a meal for my family, I'm content. And I think the hearts and mind was, and this is the key, this is where it comes back down to what, Cam was talking about, the definition of ideology. Ideology is based upon what? It's a fundamental thought, first of all, which then the rules are going to emanate from, and the hearts bit is that you're content with these rules.
So, when you mentioned fundamental thought, what's the difference between the fundamental thought of Islam, i.e. Muslims, and the fundamental thought, just say, of capitalism?
So this is where I was going to come to, right? For Muslims, and this is one of the previous points I'm going to make. I'm just going to keep this really, really simple. We can define this really, really in a complicated way, or we can keep it simple.
Keep it simple.
For me, simple wise is Muslims, for their fundamental thought is everything I do, I'm going to refer back to what Allah has told me to do. right? So the rules, and it's as simple as that. So everything we do, and when we have discussions with people, and Muslims have discussions with each other, is in Islam, can you do this? In Islam, can you not do this? And it's always linking back. So at a really simple level, Muslims are always linking back. And ultimately, what's going to decide the answer is, show me where Allah said this or the messenger said this, and okay, end the conversation. And this is the discussion amongst Muslims. Whereas for the non, and this is where, like I said, this is critical, because when me and you have a dispute on an issue, it's going to be really clear to settle it when that's our criteria, because Allah's word is fixed, right?
Quran and Sunnah.
Yeah, the Quran and Sunnah fixed. The source is fixed. We can't deviate here. You can't make something up. Oh, Allah says this in the Quran, when we open up the Quran and we say, where? I can't find it.
Yeah.
We can't say.
You can give an easy, simple example that everybody can appreciate, is that when Muslims were told to adopt democracy, many of them, when they heard the word democracy, they didn't want to adopt it. So why did America and her agents and the munafiqeen that carry out her plans, why did they start to promote democracy as being shura?
Exactly.
The reason they use different terminology is they went, oh, okay, if we call it shura, then they can go to their own scriptures and they can go, oh, okay, shura is allowed. Therefore, if democracy is shura, let's allow it. But without realizing democracy and shura are two different things. So just wanted to make that quick point.
Yeah. And when and from let's not look at the actions that Muslims do and judge them by their actions. Let's just look at where their thoughts are. So we know that a lot of people in the West, for example, Muslims will take a mortgage out to buy a house, knowing full well that actually Allah forbids interest. So where do you see them going is that they don't deny that rule. They will always say, yeah, that rule is fixed. They may give in to taking interest out, and I'm not trying to be judgmental here, but there's other reasons. Or you will find, and this is the more devious bit, is that those not hypocrites, but those devious ones amongst us will try to balance Islam with that reality and say, no, don't worry, Islam allows you because, this is necessity. And the Muslim has to balance that equation in order to do it, in order to feel content. That's where the heart and mind comes in. The rule is the mind. The heart is how content you feel with it.
Definitely.
If I could go back to your original question though as well, about what did America do to sort of take.
But one thing, just to expand, just give you a bit more of an area to work on, Cam, is I'm not talking about specifically in Iraq and Afghanistan. I'm talking about the whole world, like
This is going to be my point, really. Initially, it was what they called the shock and awe approach, didn't they? They said that shock and awe. They're going to go in, show their might and power, show that they can deal with Saddam, and the people will be in awe of them and accept democracy. Similar how when they went in and beat the obviously Soviet Union, and everyone sort of was happy about it. But it wasn't the case in Iraq. But what happened after that is, because the people obviously didn't accept that form of, taking their ideology, they tried various things. There's been a lot of things since then that they've tried and failed. So after that, you could probably arguably say Arab Spring was one of the big sort of tactics they tried. They essentially brought in Islamists to power with a bit of Islam, but mainly secular governments. And the people still didn't accept. And in fact, they themselves didn't accept it because they saw the trajectory that it was going themselves with the Muslim Brotherhood, and they thought, you know what, this was probably a bad idea. Let's take them out while we can. And then now going forward, even after that, they've now put back their heavy-handed approach of dictators, but instead they're trying to change Islam in terms of attacking the Sunnah, attacking the Hadiths, attacking the Quran with the idea of Quran is the only source of truth, and like you can't get anything from anywhere else. So the Quranites, and that's quite a big global movement, and that's emanated from the West as well. So they're trying everything in their capabilities to essentially wipe out Islam and get the people to accept democracy and freedoms and secularism. But none of them have worked up to now, and I think that was my point when you initially said the question. I don't think they have been able to, but they've tried. They've tried various different things over the years, and none of them have really worked.
The fact that I think you guys made a fantastic point is they put these dictators over the Muslims all these decades, right? persecuted them, never gave them any sort of freedom to express themselves, and thinking that they were going to go over and they were going to say, here's the Western, what does it say, good morning Vietnam or something like that. They're going to go over and everyone's going to love them. But we saw that, there's actually a quote from Tony Blair. I know I'm quoting Tony Blair a lot, and the reason why is he's actually a bit more blatant than others, right?
He is more ideological than many of the politicians, and it's well worth listening to some of what he says.
Even recently, in 2015, what he said that the religious ideas behind Islamic extremism enjoy support of many Muslim countries and are not just consigned to terrorists, right? So basically what he was saying, like, increased security measures do not deal with the roots of the problem. And this is what you guys are talking about, that like Afi was saying, it's not the actions, it's the root, right? He was saying the world must sign up to a new education around culture and faith to combat Islamist ideology. And also he said that many Muslims do feel the West is hostile to Islam. If large numbers of people really do believe that the desire of the USA or the West is to disrespect or oppress Islam, then it is not surprising that some find recourse to violence acceptable in order to reassert the dignity of the oppressed. There are millions of school children every day in countries around the world, not just in the Middle East, who are taught a view of the world and of their religion which is narrow-minded, and therefore, in the context of globalized world, dangerous. So what you can see from here is he's saying that, look, exactly what you guys are saying, that the Muslims, they haven't, they might have lost their state in 1924, but they haven't abandoned their deen, right? And all these feelings that they have against our way of life and our meddling in their affairs, right? This is something which is a problem. And that's why recently, like Kam was saying, we're seeing that they're trying to change the education curriculum. They're trying to remove the Sunnah. They're linking jihad to terrorism. They're linking Khilafah to Daesh, to ISIS. And they're talking about, where does Islam fit into modernity, right? So we can see that these are the sort of things that they're doing. And Rash mentioned they want Muslims to accept secularism. They want Muslims to accept democracy, but they're having a big problem with it, right? And even up until now. But I'm moving on to my next question.
Can I just add, sorry to interrupt, can I just add something quickly? I think this is really important. People don't appreciate this sometimes. I think the Western powers, the capitalists, these ideological, your Tony Blairs and stuff. One thing I think is really important to highlight is they're not sincere with their own ideology. This is really important, in my opinion, because, if they believed in democracy to such an extent, and when they say, oh, we're going into these Muslim lands to bring them democracy, bring them freedoms, make their countries better, there's corruption over there, we're trying to help. If they genuinely believed capitalism and democracy was somehow going to bring success to these countries, then you could almost, as someone who was neutral, you could give them some credibility where there's like a fair battle. There's like Muslims saying, we think our ideology is better, let us implement it. And there's them saying, no, we think our ideology is better, let us implement it. Almost a little bit like, when the Prophet ﷺ, the Quraysh said to him that, okay, you govern for a year and then we'll let the people, and we govern for a year and then we'll let the people choose. The non-Muslims, the West and the capitalists, they're not sincere in that respect. Again, not to say the Quraysh was sincere either, but they're not sincere in that when they take democracy to the likes of Afghanistan, look at what's just happened there. Why was it that the people in Afghanistan saw the powers that were put in place, the Afghan government that the America put in place, saw them as the most corrupt government there was out there? Why is it that as soon as America left, Taliban was able to take over so swiftly? It was because people didn't want what America was bringing, and America wasn't bringing prosperity to Muslim lands. All they're doing is they want further control of our lands. They want our resources as well. They want to change us so that they can control us more, not because they want good for us. I think Cam mentioned it in a recent other podcast. That he mentioned these ghost schools and things where they're trying to highlight to us that women have kind of been liberated because America went into those countries. Tony Blair himself, as you mentioned, I think probably even in the same interview, he said, "Oh, I still think Afghanistan was a success because look at the women reporters that are reporting, even though Taliban are in control." But without appreciating that, liberalism is destroying people, even in their own lands, let alone our lands. So the sincerity element, I think people need to appreciate that they don't want to implement democracy for our betterment. They want to implement democracy in our lands for further control, so they continue to maintain the status quo.
No, exactly, bro. Exactly. And to be honest, you've touched upon some of the things which I wanted to ask my next question for you. So what we can see is that the goal was to secularize Muslims. The goal was to spread democracy. I think this is very clear, right? Like Rash said at the beginning, go and read these reports. It's all there, right? What we can see is that after 20 years since 9/11, right, the Muslim world, and again, you can disagree with me if you want, the Muslim world, in my opinion, is not any more secular than it was 20 years ago, right? Okay, yes, one thing I would say for sure is that Western culture via social media has infiltrated the youth. But to say that people en masse have become secular and they don't want Islam, I totally disagree with this, right? So we can see that in respect of secularism, in respect of democracy, not as a shura, in their way, we can see that they haven't achieved their desired goal, and maybe that was arrogance, like Afi said, or they misdiagnosed the situation. But what they have done is taken the Muslim lands, taken, for example, the heartbeat of the Arab world, Iraq, Syria, the places where, you could certainly expect influence over the Muslim lands, those capable states, they are decimated, they are destroyed. A lot of area in North Africa now is, basically destroyed, like Libya, for example, right? Then they started the Sunni, the Shia issue. When the Hearts and Mind project failed, they thought, well, okay, let's get them fighting each other. Mm-hmm. If it doesn't stop them, at least it will slow them down and maybe give some other options, right? Even though, look, America has options A, B, and C and all that. So it's not like they just thought of it one day. But we see that they caused this issue, rift. We saw the civil war in Iraq and Syria and so on. So what my question is, even though it would seem that in the primary goal of taking this ideology, not sincerely, like Rash said, like because of care of humanity, but because they want to control these lands, right? That never really materialized, in my opinion, as they planned. But do you think that the stuff that they've done, the Arab Spring, for example, where the Muslim world is today in regards to the chaos and all that, do you think that 20 years since 9/11, they have achieved other objectives linked to their primary one, which is to maybe slow down, which is to stop the rise of Islam? What do you guys think?
I think when someone's mission in life is to preserve their way of life, they're never going to stop. This is going to go on till the day of judgment, just like we know that the struggle between Islam and Kufr is going to go on till the day of judgment. What happens over time is that depending on whether the measures they put in place are successful or not, they adapt. And I think that's what we're finding with what the enemies are doing, enemies of Islam are doing. Because let's be clear, this struggle of trying to get Muslims to abandon Islam has been going on for centuries. It happened from the moment Muhammad got revelation, and they started then.
The Quraysh were doing it.
The Quraysh were doing it, and and this is where Muslims need to understand the life of Muhammad and understand Islamic history, because you will find that this has never stopped. All that's happened is that it's adapted, it's evolved, and they're trying different things. So we know that the West have tried to get Muslims to accept Islam, accept the Western way of Islam by trying to show its merits, but these merits contradicted with other merits, so the Muslims never accepted it. They were trying to get the Muslims in the West to be advocates and ambassadors for the Western way of life, but that never happened. And I think one thing that they have started to do, and this is the bit that I would say they haven't been successful in anything that they've done, they've just made Muslims' lives really, really dire, so that the Muslims are thinking about where am I going to get my next meal from, rather than thinking about unity And that's understandable, but it doesn't mean that they've abandoned the thoughts of unity. They're still there because this is fundamental to what our belief is.
Yeah, that's a good
One
point.
thing I think that they started to do is they're starting to change what Islam means in the minds of people. And what I mean is you can't change the Quran and you can't deny the life of Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. But what they're starting to do is break that link that Muslims have with these sources. And they're trying to do this. And an examples of this is how in Saudi Arabia, for example, they're changing the curricula that people are taught. Historically, they've been taught, from the Islamic books. So now if you change the Islamic books, what people are being brought up with,
Generation game, yeah.
generation game, is they're being brought up with different views or different thoughts, or that link with Islam isn't as strong as what they would have had historically. That's still doomed for failure because the Islam is still there. Muslims will still refer back to it, but they're starting to change. And it's not just in the Muslim countries, even in the non-Muslim countries. That guy from Nottingham, he came out with a translation of the Quran, which is not in line with what Islam is, because they're trying to just sever that link between Islam and the rules and application in life, and trying to sever and trying to then dilute it so that then further, as the generations go on, they can start to dilute it further and further and further. But again, it's doomed for failure because you can't deny the truth.
Yeah. I think also, come to a second, Rash, I think also you might have come across the term constructive chaos, which was coined by Condoleezza Rice. And what we're seeing here is the fact that, you cause chaos, that you draw up new lines. Because you got to remember that in 20 years from 9/11, it would have been probably impossible 20 years ago for the normalization to happen as it did, where these countries came on and normalized Israel, right? That would not have happened. So it's a process. But what you see is like, even in this chaos, you can redraw lines. And also, like you said, if people just can think of their next meal, they're not thinking of world domination. And these lot of things that at that stage, if then you say, do you want a good life? Do you want to be living like us? Then this is what you need to do. And actually, religion has been your biggest enemy. Because of religion, you're in this situation, right? But like you said, Afian, it's a really good point that people haven't forgot the roots. They haven't forgot these things. At the moment, maybe their priority, and not maybe, it definitely is, their priority is feeding their children. But that doesn't mean they deny all those other things. Rashia, go for it, bro.
Just a short one, really, is, there has been a bit of a tug of war. Like sometimes people get frustrated. They go, oh, you're saying that America does this, America does that. Somehow America controls the world. Or then there's other people who go, oh, it's always the Jews. The Jews are the people in the shadows. They're controlling everything. To be fair, there's a degree of tug of war. All of these strategies, whilst I think the word Afi uses key, generational, they recognize that sometimes they don't immediately succeed. So they know that Muslims see there's the sources of Islam. They understand that Muslims recognize Quran and Sunnah and Ijma, and these things are important. So what they try and do is, remember, they understand our Islam better than the majority of Muslims. It's quite scary. When you read some of these reports and when you go back and read things like, Clash of Civilizations and stuff, what you'll be shocked by, and you read some of even the Orientalists' writings, what you'll be shocked by is how well they understand Islam and how maybe the vast majority of Muslims don't even understand Islam that well, certainly from a historic and ideological point of view. So for them, it's like a tug of war. They'll try one strategy, and even we might say it failed, but imagine there's 100 people and their one strategy infects 5 of them. But then they wanted to affect all 100, but they failed. But those issues continue amongst the Muslims. So what you get is you get those 5 people who think, oh, okay, we want this version of Islam. Then they throw another, some people become Quranites. Yeah, those 5 people become Quranites. Then all of a sudden they introduce another one where it's like, oh, okay, the hudud punishments aren't from Islam. Then you get some reformist Muslims go, okay, I'll latch on to that. What do you get? You eventually end up with all of these disparate ideas, and that is a big problem amongst the Muslim community now. What ends up happening is we can't agree with one another because one person's pushing Quranism, another person is pushing reform, another person is pushing, oh, Sharia can be implemented, under democracy in terms of as long as the objectives of Sharia are there, it's fine. And what does that do? It causes Muslims to be confused, and they recognize that in itself is a means that helps them. If we remain confused, then how are we ever going to unite?
Also, as well, Rash, just to add to that, is the fact that they made it, they didn't hide it, the fact that we can't go in and tell the Muslim community what they do, what they can't. This is a battle from within. You might have heard that they should say that this is a battle from within the Muslim community, and they should talk about homegrown imams and stuff like that. So this was a global agenda in getting people from within to exactly what he says. Fantastic point. Never really saw it that way, to cause confusion on things that doesn't need to be any confusion.
And that's frightening, because some of the ones they use are ones that have already gained credibility within the ummah. So you'll get these ones that have done loads of charity work, have done various projects. Everybody gives them this level of credibility. They think that, this person is amazing. And then that person drops something completely against Islam. And it's like, what do you do? Because everybody just goes, oh, he must be right, because look at all the other good stuff he's done. Very, very dangerous strategy.
It's not coincidental, man. But listen, come on, I want to ask you a question, bro. I want to ask you a question.
I think did we answer your previous question on what America, what other goals did it achieve by going into the Middle East? I thought I'll try and keep it really simple, a point that I was thinking in my head at the time.
Okay, but what I want to do, I want you to combine it with the next question I got.
Okay.
Which I want to put. Is that what lessons do you think that America has learned during its war on terror, war on Islam since 9/11? And also, has America changed its style in this confrontational between capitalism and Islam?
Yeah. Okay, so I'll start off with what America have, what America has achieved by going into Middle East and that sort of after the post 9/11 era. If with an analogy I was thinking of is, if you think of this is America, I'm trying to do it with the left to right, right to left for me, because I know it's going to be opposite on the screen. Say this is America, this is the Middle East, and over here you got China and you got China and you got Russia, right? America obviously saw the threat of Islam more greater than the Chinese threat and the Russian threat from an ideological perspective. People might disagree with that if they're not Muslims, or even if they're Muslims. Some Muslims actually feel that the threat is from China and Russia over Islam. But we know from an Islamic perspective, from the Quran, where Allah tells us that they will attempt to extinguish the light of Allah. There's various verses that tell us, Allah is telling us that their main purpose is to attack Islam, not to fight amongst each other. And that's what they'll do afterwards, if they were to defeat Islam. But let's use this analogy. What they did is they went into the Middle East, and Condoleezza Rice put it as the birth pangs of a new Middle East. So they did want to go in and change the Middle East, and they didn't know how. Obviously, they knew how they wanted to change it, but it didn't go to plan. So what they did is they left a burning fire over the Middle East, just lit it up completely, from Syria, Iraq, Afghanistan.
Would you not say that's part of the plan?
I wouldn't say initially it was part of the plan. I'd say initially it was attempting to give their ideology, and it failed. And like we said, they tried various things over the years, and in the end they went all the way to creating a fake state, and even then the Muslims didn't accept it. So they did various things, but in the end what they thought what's best is, do you know what, leave it on fire. Let's think about that another day. We're now on the borders of Russia and China, right? So now we have complete control of this area through our agents, through our armies, military bases, everything. Now we can deal with these, what they call the revisionist powers. And revisionist powers, essentially, this is a term you'll see a lot in their think tank reports and stuff. A revisionist power is it's a power that wants to be a superpower in the near future, but they can't. They don't have the means to be it. So what they do is they play within the game, and they play within their borders, and they make little gains, small gains. So Russia tried it in Crimea in Ukraine to obviously annex it. America said, wait a minute, you can't do that. They put in their proxies, and obviously we know that what's going on in there. China are trying to take over the South China Sea. And you've got the One Belt, One Road policy, which they don't agree with. This is going to give them a lot more better economy than America. So they're working within their own means to be able to basically become superpower. So America still needs to realize they have a 100-year plan. They don't want any other power sort of surpassing them over the next 100 years. So, but the most imminent threat was from the Muslims. So they went in, and like I said, they failed there. They left it on fire, and now they're trying to deal with Russia and China. I purely think that they don't know what to do with Islam right now. They're trying various things, and nothing's working. In the end, they've let Taliban come back into power. That in itself is a defeat for America, even though it's a tactic. We're saying that in itself, the fact that they had to resort to that proves that they really don't know what they're doing, and they don't know how to really get these Muslims to abandon Islam. So they're like, okay, you can have what you want. You can have Taliban. Let's show them that Taliban are really bad, and they're going to want democracy again one day. And now that fire that they've left in the Middle East, that's the fire that's now going to burn them. So that's how I think of it. If you think of it as an analogy of fire over the Middle East, now they're trying to deal with these revisionist powers that are increasing their power and taking advantage. In the end, that fire that they left behind in the Middle East, because they didn't deal with it, is going to be the fire that really burns them.
That was actually going to be one of my questions to you, is do they now that they've got this fire going, do they now turn their sights on China and Russia? But yeah, if you think you want to add to...
Yeah, one thing that America has been successful in doing, and this is post 9/11, is before 9/11, America was waging this war against Islam, and that's clear, man. We could do a whole series of podcasts on this to give the evidence of this, right? And America probably thought to themselves, man, this is in the interest of bloody every capitalist out there, right? Every country out there. Why is it that we're fighting this on our own? We incurring the cost and we incurring the death rate, right? Bloody everyone should be doing in this. One thing that have been very, very successful in this is they've globalized the war on Islam, and globalized it to the extent that it's not just countries that are embroiled in it. The average citizen in these countries is fighting this war against Islam for them. And that is very, very clear in the incidences that we see against Muslims in every single country. The attack that every little guy, every person on the street is, like you said, Kam, at school you were being labeled a terrorist, like it's a taboo thing to be a Muslim, and you're scared to be called a Muslim, where you're keeping your views to yourself. We're becoming more close families, whereby we just go outside and do our own things, and then our circles are just amongst ourselves. They're attacking every single rule to do with Islam when it comes to Muslims, like halal meat, women dress, what you're being taught at school. Why is it that Muslims are the ones who are against what we're teaching in schools, when actually, really, there's loads of people against the curricula at school, but it's only Muslims. Every single person has a spotlight on Muslims on every single issue, to the point where Muslims are feeling it.
Yeah, that's a really good point, actually. And like you said about bringing in all the rest of the world for this attack on Islam, that's really key, because even if you look at it from a geopolitical angle, what's happened now after, what we've seen in Afghanistan is now they're making, the problem to be the Chinese and the Russians and the rest of the Muslim world to be, deal with terrorism. So the fact that, and not only that, actually, the most important one is that they've woken up Europe. Europe thought that they were they thought that they were fine, and then they realized when America quickly exited, they're dependent on America. They were like, well, they acted without us, and now we're the ones, having to suffer. And I've got a good quote, actually, from there was an article from the Atlantic Council, and they said that the swift evacuation was actually a threat from America to Europe. They did it on purpose so that essentially Europe feel that they need America. They need America to be in there, and they need America's protection. And that will, obviously, we've seen over the years that Obama, Trump, and everyone that have been saying, they're not putting enough money into NATO. They're not putting enough of their GDP into fighting terrorism. It's always the American soldiers that are dying, or and doing all the wars. So they've been telling the Europeans have just been holding back, chilling, giving it here and there. And now they realize this has been a massive shock to Europe. And another, actually, really good quote I'll read out here. It says, "But Europeans should not draw narrow conclusions about the security risks they'll face based on Afghanistan's consequences and the withdrawal alone. Instead, to protect European security, they should focus on combating the Russian threat, rising to the challenge from China, and returning to NATO's core strategic interests. The latter should be welcome across European capitals. As Biden put it, Moscow and Beijing would love nothing more than the United States to continue funnel billions of dollars in resources and attention into stabilizing Afghanistan indefinitely. So this is a quote basically saying that we're trying to get Europe to realize what the threat is for capitalism, and it's Russia, China, and it's the Muslims. So it's really, you can, like Afi was saying, it's enabled the entire world to basically divert their attention to Islam, and that, like I was saying, that fire that's there burning. And they're telling the others, now you lot douse the fire. You know, we've been dousing it for the last 20 years. You guys have just been chilling. Now it's your turn, and this is what's happening as well.
And that directly links to Maj's question about, you know, this change in strategy. You know, this, because what you've highlighted there identifies one of the issues of boots on the ground type war. So what you're highlighting is that no longer do the masses accept that, you know, and applies directly to America, that, oh, we can just keep sending our armies in. Because, you know, the cost of losing, there's two sides to it, actually, and probably more, but two sides I think of is, one side is that the masses are war weary now. They don't want yet another Afghanistan or another Iraq. In fact, you know, America spent more time in those countries than Vietnam. So, you know, that's how important the Islamic lands are to America. And what is the figures that are brandished around, what, 6-7 trillion? So, you know, the cost financially and the cost in terms of their soldiers, the masses aren't willing to accept that anymore, especially because their quality of life of the general person on the street has gone down. But that's what has enabled them. That's one side of what has enabled this newer strategy of a more covert way of colonialism. Yeah, it's not direct colonialism, it's kind of an indirect version. And you know, your question, Maj, about this idea that why is there a change in strategy? It's one that the people are more war weary, in my opinion, but the other one is from a technology point of view, game changer. What we had 20 years ago versus what we have now is totally different. They now have drone technology. They now have infiltration technology. They now can infiltrate everybody's phone, and you know, the way in which they can control a nation can be done without your masses even knowing about it. You know, America are waging war on so many countries that if you go to the common person on the street and go, oh, is America at war with anybody? Oh, no, they've pulled out of Afghanistan and Iraq.
Bro, they don't even link America to Syria.
Exactly. So, and so clever, and that's why they succeeded with the Arab Spring, is that they were able to dictate matters over there. They were able to control things with their proxies and with their technology, such that they were able to achieve some of their objectives, maybe most of their objectives, without boots on the ground. And that's huge. And that's why the whole neoliberalism, neo-colonialism that they talk about is the modern way of controlling the world.
Yeah, just, you know, just to add to, I was going to say my mate, but he's not my mate, Tony Blair. Some of the stuff that he said only about a week ago actually ties in with exactly what you guys are saying. For example, Afi talked about, like, and Kam talk about a global effort. He said, look, he said, if this correct analysis, i.e. that Islam and Islamism is the most crucial problem facing the West, he's saying that if this is a correct analysis, then especially after the fall of Afghanistan, the leading powers must unite to develop an agreed strategy. Even if initial discussions center around Western nations, China and Russia also have an interest in countering this ideology. And our best allies are to be found in many Muslim countries, including the Middle East, desperate to retake their religion from extremism. So basically what he's trying to highlight, you know, like other people, like Rash said, this guy is very ideological. You know, other people like, China's the biggest threat and Russia's. He's saying, yo, listen,
other people sugarcoat it. He doesn't sugarcoat it.
He says history tells you, you get me, had the Persians and the Romans maybe combined and said, let's deal with these guys in the desert, they probably would have been around today. But history shows you that actually you have Islam on one side and everyone else on the other side, right? And that's just the way it is. And he's saying, look, in fact, we need to make China and Russia realize that, listen, these guys are a problem for you as well. So guys, inshallah, what I want to do is kind of get your sort of final thoughts on this issue, and ask you really, moving forward now, after 20 years since the day those planes flew into the Twin Towers, into the, well, whether it was a plane or not, who flew into the Pentagon, that's another question. But anyway, something hit the Pentagon, right? 20 years since then, okay, we see the situation of the Muslim world. Some of us are older than the others in this, in this podcast, on this podcast. So our experiences might be different, but we can see how America has changed its styles, how it changed from that very gung-ho direct colonialism to indirect colonialism, and how Muslim perceptions have been kind of changed in these years. There's a quote from what was the guy's name? Lindsey Graham. He's a Republican senator, and he was given an interview. And basically what he was saying is that the Taliban are not reformed, they're not new. They have a view of the world out of sync with modern times. And here he's talking about Islam, right? They are going to impose a lifestyle on the Afghan people, which will make all of us sick to our stomach. So he's talking about Islam here. What he was saying is, we will have to go back into Iraq. We will have to go back into Afghanistan. And even the report said, what are you talking about? He said, listen, we have to, okay? Because he was saying that, we need to stop the caliphate from rising. Obviously, people may think he's talking about Daesh, but he's actually talking about political Islam. We're talking about Islam, the Khilafah, right? And he said, hit them before they hit you. So one more question, guys, or get your thoughts on final thoughts is it going to be moving forward, is it going to be more of the same? What do you guys think? Rash, I'll start with you, bro. Your final thoughts.
Yeah, my final thoughts. Okay, I got a couple of things just to highlight, really. Yeah. So I think as a Muslim now, I think we probably should have been doing this for many years, but I think now we need to really decide which side of this line that we're on. There's all this terminology about extremism, radicalism, all of these things, but anybody who's willing to look into it, they will realize that these terms that they use, if you completely question what you believe in, you fall into that camp, regardless of how integrated you are and all of these things. Every Muslim needs to ask themselves that. So there was a time,
like Bush said, are you with us or against us?
Exactly. There was a time you could be what you might call an unaffected bystander. That's I'll coin the term. If you could go, I don't believe in what, I don't believe in what they're saying, but you know what? I'm just going to stand aside. I'm going to believe in my Islam. It's not going to affect me. I'll move on with my life. While we did that, they introduced, they started indoctrinating our children with atheism, with LGBT, and they started indoctrinating our women with feminism and all of these things. That's what happens when you stand idly by and go, I'm not one of those, I'm not going to do anything. Every Muslim now needs to take a step forward and go, look, this is what they're fighting, and I need to be on that battlefield intellectually. I need to be on that battlefield. And this whole, this 20 years since 9/11, if it's taught us anything, it has taught us that this has always been a war on Islam. And whether we want to be, if we're not in that battlefield, we're not protecting Islam from our side. The Prophet ﷺ told us, we are like the vanguards of our Deen. And when our Deen is attacked from our side, we need to defend it. If we be that bystander, what we're doing is we're going, you know what? I'm not going to protect Islam from my side. I'm going to let it be attacked. And if enough of us let it be attacked, which is what we've allowed, we see the situation that the Muslims are in today. So I think that's my first and foremost key thing people need to really think about. Do you want to be involved in that battle or not? And when I say battle, we're talking about battle of ideas. That means intellectual. It doesn't mean picking up a gun and going out and fighting. It means Islam has the strongest ideas, learn those ideas and go out on the battlefield of ideas and present Islam. It will destroy their ideas, absolutely destroys them, because Haqq always destroys Batil. Okay. The other quick point I want to make is that, all of these things that are being attacked, it's ironic, isn't it? After 9/11, the amount of people that became more aware of Islam. So be that non-Muslims who became Muslims because they looked into Islam, be that, like Cam was saying, someone who might have gone many more years in his life not looking into Islam anymore. Because remember, a lot of us were born into Muslim families, but how many of our parents sat us down and said, this is the intellectual basis for Islam? Very few. But 9/11 triggered that. Many more people said, you know what, I need to understand my Islam more so that when I'm questioned on it, I can answer it. And does that not prove more than anything else that they plot and plan and Allah is the best of planners? Because as much as every single day has been a 9/11 for Muslims, because the amount of Muslims that have died and been displaced since 9/11 is much more than the number of people who died on 9/11. Yeah. So we need to move forward and go, you know, we study our Deen, we intellectually debate with people that Islam is the haqq. And I think those things we really need to appreciate. And whenever there's been these discussions, you know, when they try and attack the Quran or the Hadith, or they try to attack the concept of jihad, or they try to attack the concept of khilafah, what has happened? More people speak about it. And then the stronger evidence has come out on top. So if you're willing to listen, then you realize, wait there, what they're saying is wrong. This concept of jihad al-nafs that they try to push, when that comes to the table, it gets destroyed when you understand the true nature of jihad. So those are just a few things that the fallout of 9/11 should have made us all appreciate. There are negatives because so many people have suffered, but there are positives. And remember, the successes with Allah and his Deen in the end depends how much we want to be involved in that success.
Alhamdulillah. Really good points, bro. Really good points, man. Always look at the positive element of it as well. Afi, any final thoughts, my brother?
Just to your question, you know, on how, you know, is the attack going to get more severe? I think that's going to depend on the reaction of the Muslims. How do Muslims and how do we as an ummah react to what the West is doing? And we've seen from the life of Muhammad Sallallahu that as Muslims get closer to our solution and to Islam, the intensity of the attack gets greater. And, you know, for me, I just want Muslims to think about two things, right? That we've seen all these problems that the West is doing for us, and the Muslims are reacting, and they want to react to them in different ways. But from Islam, we see people trying to present Islam in a good light and present Islam as the truth to the average person on the street. And they see that, yeah, it is having good results. Like, you know, the average person, well, you know, we're trying to change their perception of it. So the Muslims are trying to react good. But again, it's embroiled in individual issues and individual solutions on the ground. In other areas, like we mentioned, Syria, the refugee crisis of the Muslim world, and the Muslims want to react, you know, Muslims want to support with their money and their resources and their time and help our brothers. But I think what we need to do is that there's a jigsaw puzzle here and there's individual pieces. And as a Muslim, we need to stop focusing on these individual issues and put these jigsaw pieces together. And when we do, we will work collectively for a comprehensive solution that addresses all of our problems. And this will also come from Islam. And that's where the worry is. Our solution to our problems is in the exact same thing that the West are fighting.
Yeah, no, Jazakallah khair, man. Brother Cam?
No, I think the brothers sort of covered it from an Islamic perspective really well, and some of the verses and stuff that they're given is really that's the main thing. For me, I guess going forward, I don't know, in the next 20 years, I can probably, obviously the attack on Islam will continue. That's inevitable. Muslims in the West will probably feel I don't know, feel a bit more hopelessness because there's going to be people, you know, countries like the French and the German and all the European countries now getting involved in the Muslim world a lot more heavily than they have before. So it's going to be how we react to that, how we react to that. Do we react to it positively and start looking into Islam more? And like Rash was saying, really culture ourselves on the concepts of Islam and what take part in the discussion that's going to happen going forward. But I can really see that from my sort of thinking of what's going to happen in the next 20 years, I can see America struggling from a geopolitical perspective, and there's going to be a clash between other powers, and that could give Islam and the Muslims a chance to rise again, inshallah, because we know from the time of the Prophet ﷺ that the Persians and the Romans, they were clashing, and they were thinking, you know, these are Arabs in the desert, they're not going to harm us. And it's a similar situation now. It's going to be a case of technology, like Rash was saying, it's advanced at such a level that even in the latest military report, the Americans, you know how they do every year, they do a military report of the next 50 years or so and how to contain, and the main thing they mentioned there was obviously containing Islam as an ideology, as well as revisionist powers, as in China and Russia. So the fact that they know that these two are their biggest threats, they know technology is causing these other powers to grow quickly, and their attention is being diverted. Their attention can't be on everything at all the time. They're not Allah in the end of the day. And a lot of people criticize some of our sort of analysis and say, you guys just give too much credit to America. But we're saying here that they're not Allah, they're not almighty, they can't see everything. They will make mistakes, and they have up till now. So we need to, as Muslims, we need to react good. We need to look into Islam and really find our solutions from Islam, not the solutions that they're going to start providing us with, i.e., you know, go out on marches against your country, going into Afghanistan again, or going into other parts of the Muslim world, or, you know, there's going to be various things that they're going to give to the Muslims and say, this is how you should react, this is how you should vent your anger, do these petitions, do this, do that, and well, it's going to be we're going to see how the Muslims react, and I think that's going to be key over the next 20 years.
Yeah, Jazakallah khair, man. The only question I have is, with all this technology, when are we going to get hoverboards, like from Back to the Future? But my final thoughts, really, I mean, you guys are just really made a comprehensive comments, which is difficult. One thing I would say is that as Muslims, what we have to understand is, you know, there's a saying that, you know, the people who live in glass houses shouldn't throw stones. And what we have to understand is, we have the truth, and that's why we've lasted so long in the situation we have, right? Other people wouldn't have. But what we have to understand also is that they have the falsehood, right? So intellectually, the masses, they are already looking for something different. You know, they live in a very miserable life. So yeah, the people at the top, the elites, the super capitalists, they live in it large. They benefit from these wars and stuff like that. But the normal person, they are looking for change. So out of all this situation, 20 years on, okay, let's just not look at the situation of where the Muslims are. Let's look at the situation where the people of the West are, and they're in a worse situation, right? And that's why I want to just read a last bit from Mr. Blair's latest speech, and it will sum it up, and then we'll sort of bring it to a close. He said, finally, one of the most depressing things I've heard regularly articulated over the past weeks is the idea that we are foolish in believing the Western notions of liberal democracy and freedom are exportable or will ever take root except in the somewhat decadent terrain of Western society, right? He said, maybe my generation of leaders were naive in thinking countries could be remade, right? Or maybe the remaking needed to last longer. But this is the important bit. But we should never forget, as we see the women of Afghanistan in the media, culture, and civic society now flee in fear of their lives, that our values are still those that free people choose, right? So they're still promoting that their values are the best. But this bit's key now. People might miss this. He said, recovering confidence in our values and in their universal application is a necessary part of ensuring we stand up for them and are prepared to defend them. So yeah, we as Muslims talk about we need to instill confidence in Muslims of the Deen and the applicability of Islam and so on. But they're trying to do the same.
They're trying to do the same. People are questioning. A lot of people are questioning democracy. You know, because of the failures that they've had. There are a lot of people now saying, wait, maybe the problem is in our own way of life. Maybe there's liberalism, democracy. But that's what you get with falsehood.
And that's the point. So as Muslims, 20 years on, let's not just look at the situation where, for a fact, their situation is worse. And why? Because of their false belief. So 20 years after 9/11, okay, they haven't been able to remove the Aqidah of Islam. And in fact, their aqidah of secularism is actually rotting away because it's falsehood anyway. So this is something which we need to contemplate on, brothers and sisters. Let's not be on the defensive. Like Rach said, let's culture ourselves in our deen, and we should be the ones who taking the truth. We should be the saviors of the world. They make out they're the saviors of the world, trying to show out how they're trying to remove these Afghan people from Afghanistan, how good they are, right? We are the true saviors of the world. So brothers, I'm going to sort of like bring the podcast to a close. It's been really interesting getting all your thoughts, your views, and much appreciated. I'm sure the listeners and those watching at home will benefit. I can see Rash is putting his finger up. I don't know if, okay, was that just a scratch? Okay, right. So I'm going to end it on that note. This podcast will be uploaded on the Islamic Vibes podcast, which is available on all popular podcast platforms. Also, if you want to watch it on YouTube, then you can watch it on the Path to Revival YouTube channel. Guys, again, like I always say, inshallah, we'll do this again. And up until then, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.